Okay, colleagues, now let's talk in more detail about particular individual sophists. Now, it breaks my heart that we don't have more time to devote to these wonderful thinkers. We could easily devote, I think, a couple of full lectures just to the ideas of the sophists. So, lamentably, I'm going to have to be necessarily superficial. But let's try again to step back and focus on the main issues. So, the sophists, as far as we can tell, for the first time attempted to bring a systematic analysis, systematic critical reflection upon the questions of individual morality and social justice. So, again, we talked in the previous segments about the mythological tradition, which formed the uncritical basis of the traditional worldview. We talked about the natural philosophers who tried to give a rational account of the cosmos. Now, specifically, the sophists are going to try to locate a separate sphere of humanity, of human law, as distinct from natural law. Again, this very important distinction between Physis and Nomos, between laws of nature and laws of particular societies. Now, within this distinction, even to ask this question, right? Within this distinction, there's a danger, there's an inherent danger. When you ask, what should I do? How should I behave? Should I obey the laws of my society? Are the laws of my society good? Within this very question, there is something dangerous and potentially unacceptable from a social standpoint. Maybe you could say it is religiously impious. It is impious towards the gods to ask this question. Maybe it is treacherous or treasonous vis-a-vis your community to ask this question. Very often, religious cults would demand unquestioned faith from their followers, and in a similar fashion, particular societies, within the ancient Greek context, particular polises, right, individual city-states, would demand unquestioned loyalty from their subjects, patriotism, right? And to demand reasons, to ask questions, to demand a rational justification could be seen as doubly dangerous, right? Impious towards the god and unpatriotic towards your city. But these are the stakes for which the sophists are playing. Now, I have to admit, right? Sophists get a lot of very bad reputation. And very often, with some amazement, I see professors of philosophy teach a course like this with a tacit presupposition that somehow the sophists are amoral, immoral, and wrong. And a purpose of a class like this is to disprove their ideas. Now, very explicitly, I want to take a step back from this attitude and ask us to be potentially more open-minded. We do not know. Let's not jump to conclusions. As a matter of fact, you will see as the course progresses that the ideas of, especially the ideas of modern political philosophy, are actually much closer to the ideas of the sophists than they are to the ideas of traditional Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, as maybe we will see. So this is a very good reason to pay extra attention to what these philosophers hated throughout the ages had to say. Hated for their unpalatable conclusions, but we have to ask what are the reasons for these conclusions, even if we find them tragic, maybe. So the basic question that the sophists are asking, many ways to phrase it, the simplest way to phrase it is, again, go back to this distinction between Physis and Nomos, between the laws of nature, the natural order of the universe, and the laws of a given society. Are they in line? Are they in conflict? Right? So, but we ask a question of the relationship, so we assume, or we are open to the possibility that there maybe is a disjunction. Another way to make this question maybe more specific is to ask, so we have social norms of justice, which are defined by society, maybe even imposed by society. And then we have a question of individual advantage. I wrote the word advantage because it seems neutral. You could write other words. You could write, what is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my individual existence? What does individual human happiness consist in? Right? So what is a good life for the individual, and what does society define to be the good? And could it be that these two come into conflict? That to be a good person, a good human, and to be a good patriot or a good citizen, maybe these two could come apart. Again, potentially dangerous thought. Now, our first thinker is going to be Protagoras. Now, very interestingly, most of Protagoras' work is lost. We only barely have scraps. Actually, our main source of information about Protagoras is Plato, specifically Plato's dialogues. So I want to alert your attention to this fact. It was Plato who decided that the ideas of Protagoras were important enough and interesting enough to be preserved. Now, whether Plato agreed with Protagoras' ideas is hard to say. The traditional view is that no, he didn't, and that he wrote explicitly against Protagoras. But I want us to be a bit more careful and resist the temptation of jumping to conclusions. So again, Protagoras is a wonderful philosopher. One could easily devote a whole lecture or maybe several to his works, but I'm going to have to be very brief. So in the dialogue, Protagoras tells a very interesting story, which is supposed to illustrate the position, the place of humanity in the cosmos, in the universe, in the large scheme of things. It's a very interesting, very enigmatic story. Protagoras says that when the gods created the world, and specifically when the gods created living things, animals, to each animal they gave a certain special talent or strength. Some animals are fast, some animals have sharp claws, some animals are strong, etc., etc. But as the gods were creating all of these animals, the gods have run out. No special skills were left for the humans. Is this universe our home? The story told by Protagoras seems to suggest that the gods, in an important sense, forgot about the human beings. And so the human beings are born without any particular skill, any particular inborn talent, so to speak. This is a very important idea we'll see later on. Rousseau calls this human perfectibility, which can be translated as unfinishedness. Human beings are born radically unfinished. Human babies are weak and powerless. Human babies need families and actually societies to become fully human, fully properly human. We are dependent on society in this way. So humans did not get any special strength. So as an afterthought, so to speak, what happens in Protagoras' story is that Prometheus steals, so very interesting idea, steals. So there's an element of transgression, right? Prometheus steals from the gods the crafts. So humans are born with no particular talent, but humans can now acquire the various crafts, various professions, if you want, like being a shoemaker or a blacksmith, right? So the ability to learn, which also has this interesting social character, right? You learn to be a blacksmith by studying with other blacksmiths, with teachers of the art, so to speak. And then Protagoras says that basically, the crafts allowed human beings now to survive, but human life was horrible. It was horribly conflictual because human beings did not have justice among themselves. And so Protagoras, maybe in anticipation, some of you may be familiar with the idea, paints a picture which is very similar to what later on Thomas Hobbes is going to call the war of all against all. And so as a second afterthought, now Zeus gives human beings justice. And Protagoras says that on the one hand, justice is given to all in an equal measure. That again, you have experts in astronomy or expert blacksmiths or expert shoemakers, but nobody is a particular expert in justice. Justice is given equally to all. And Protagoras says in the same fashion how every Greek person knows how to speak Greek, and any Greek person is, so to speak, an expert in Greek language, right? In a similar fashion, every Greek is an expert of what the justice is, or at least not an expert, but a qualified practitioner of justice. And Protagoras even says it would be mad for any person to admit with a word of mouth that they are unjust. So, in the interest of saving time, I'm going to have to engage a little bit in some of my own interpretation, but I do definitely encourage you to read the dialogue on your own and to try to search for deeper or maybe alternative meanings which may be hidden within it, right? So what Protagoras seems to be saying, seems to be emphasizing, is this, again, unfinished nature of the human beings. Human children are born powerless. They need society in order to survive, but also human children are born unfinished and they need society to, so to speak, fill in the blanks, to teach us, first of all, the crafts, which are not natural, but artificial, acquired by studying with other human beings, on the one hand. And on the other hand, we also need society to teach us the rules of justice, the laws of justice. And in fact, Protagoras emphasizes that this is not necessarily a consensual task. He likens it to a straightening of crooked wood, or straightening of warped wood, right? So children are born and then they have to be taught justice, and also very explicitly they have to be exposed to a regimen of punishments, beatings, spankings, and threat of punishment in order to make this crooked timber of human nature straight and conducive to just behavior. Many ways in which one could interpret this, but it seems what Protagoras is saying is that justice is unnatural. Justice is not natural to human beings. Justice is conventional. The nomoi, the laws of particular societies, are not derived from nature. They have to be instilled in individual human beings through culture, if you want. However, the flip side is also clear. Protagoras says that even though justice, in an important sense, is unnatural, and so, in many ways, society has to force the individuals into a particular mold. But Protagoras is saying that without the laws of justice, we plunge into a war of all against all. And this is clearly in nobody's interest. So justice in Protagoras, in his limited consensual view, so I would put Protagoras preliminarily here in the consensual side. So Protagoras says it is in our interest to actually obey the laws of society, not because they are natural, but because the alternative is just too horrible. However, at the same time, immediately one could see that if the only reason we obey the laws of justice is because it's the second best and injustice leads to some kind of worse outcome for everyone, it's clear that we are not talking about something dignified. We're not talking about capital J justice. We're talking about a mere compromise or a mere second best. And in fact, rooted in this, the danger which is rooted in this problem, in this presentation of justice, is the problem of free riding, the free rider problem, or later Hobbes will talk about the fool's problem. The idea being that what if somebody were to try to break the laws of justice, the norms of society, and get away with it, right? One transgression will not immediately plunge the whole world into chaos. So it seems that the second best is when everybody obeys the laws of justice. But the first best, maybe, is for everybody else to obey the laws of justice, but for you yourself to disobey these laws. It's a dangerous possibility implicit there in Protagoras. Can Protagoras really offer a deep, principled defense of justice? It's not so clear. It's not so clear. And this question will be made even sharper when we get to other thinkers which follow Protagoras in this dialogical progression.